our Share the Plate offering as a way to care for the wider world. This month's Share the Plate recipient is Minnesota Honor Tax, chosen by our Land Acknowledgement and Beyond Working Group. For thousands of years, the Dakota Oyata lived in and cared for much of the land as we know as Minnesota. Even as external pressures pushed Dakota bands out of northern Minnesota, the Dakota continued to maintain traditional villages, hunting and gathering grounds, and travel routes throughout the area that stretch across most of Minnesota from Moorhead to Cambridge. Through treaties, wars, and broken promises, the United States took that Dakota land as its own. Today, we who live in this land can recognize and support the enduring sovereignty of the Lower Sioux Indian community by contributing to this honor tax. The honor tax is a voluntary payment made directly to the tribe. During the offering later, you may put cash or a check in the basket, donate online from your website, Northfield.org, or if your check is for a pledge, simply write pledge in the memo line. There will also be instructions on the screen during the offertory time. And I call your attention to the weekly emails. We do not have a bulletin today, so it is important to check your emails for the following information. The care team. The care conservation. The Care Team Conservation on Grief, facilitated by Martha Easter Wells, next Saturday, March 23rd at 10 a.m. here at UUFN. A reminder to clean out your junk drawers for hidden treasures, for a child to make a try that again. A reminder to clean up your junk drawers for hidden treasures that a child may want for our non-traditional Easter hunt on Easter Sunday. A care team circle on March 25th to reflect and learn about Transgender Day of Visibility. And an information session after the service today to learn how to use our new online database, Breeze. Join us next Sunday for another look at the Bible story of the Samaritan woman, Courage, Culture, and Mercy by Sandra Griffin. Again, welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Northfield.
Good morning, all. I am Reverend Sara Smalley, she, her pronouns, and I serve this congregation as its minister. Today, we continue our reflection on this month's theme of the gift of transformation with these opening words from Reverend Kim Mason. Once upon a time, chemists believed that they could transform lead into gold or death into life. We laugh. But are we not also in the business of alchemy, turning loneliness into connection, pain into comfort, anger into solidarity, faith into action? The subtle magic of church combines love with justice, creates hope out of fear, transforms individuals into community. Here we engage in a holy alchemy, finding beauty in the ordinary and life in the present. Come, let us be transformed together. An explanation before we light our chalice today. Today we are considering transformation as a core religious value. That means we are talking about change as a part of the spiritual journey, change both for each of us as individuals and as a community. So we get to experiment with change today. Our chalice lighting words are different than they usually are just for today. We'll use what is known as the Blake Covenant, written by Unitarian minister and poet James Villa Blake in 1894. The words are on the screen, or for those on the sanctuary, if you can't see the screen very well. It is number 473 in the hymnal, 473. Many Unitarian Universalist congregations across the country still recite this as their covenant every Sunday. I invite you to not wordsmith the 1894 language and to know that our regular chalice lighting words will be back next week. But more importantly, I invite you to notice what it feels like to say a covenant, the promises we make to each other, out loud as a part of worship. Bob will now lead us in our chalice lighting.
The flaming chalice is a symbol of Unitarian Universalism, a beacon that transforms oil and oxygen into light and hope. Each Sunday when we gather, we bring the symbol of life together. Please join me in speaking the words for the lighting of the chalice. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant to dwell together in peace, to seek the life in love, and to help one another. Please rise in body or spirit for our opening hymn, 1017, in the teal hymnal, We Are Building a New Way.
Our time for all ages story today is a reflection by the Reverend Elia Kemmler. Again, these are not my words, but Reverend Kemmler's. This is entitled, "The Church Where Everything Goes Wrong." 6 weeks into the church year, I have realized that I am the minister of a church where things usually go wrong. This morning, the copy machine jams repeatedly. The bulletin describing the order of worship has been copied with the second page first and also upside down. No one has remembered to turn on the lights in the sanctuary before the service, so it is dark because it's raining outside. The microphone is buzzing and lets out a painful, high-pitched squeal, which makes people wince. We have just started the service when someone runs up with a bunch of flowers for the altar, just as someone else runs in with one of the silk arrangements we keep for mornings when no one brings real flowers. There is laughter as the two flower bearers meet at the altar. They talk, they decide on the real flowers, and things settle down until a baby starts crying, which sets off another baby crying. I try to speak over the wailing as their fathers hustle them down the aisle and try to distract them in the back. Usually, I love watching the tall, gentle fathers who bounce their babies in backpacks at the rear of the sanctuary. But today, I am annoyed because I want it to be quiet and holy and lovely, and things are definitely not shaping up that way. The woman who is helping with worship gets up and instead of giving the announcements, introduces the candle lighting time, which comes later. People call out, "Not yet." More laughter. The organist starts playing the wrong hymn, and a couple of choir members yell over the din for him to stop. A few minutes later, during the period for prayerful silence, he accidentally falls onto the keyboard, causing the organ to emit horrible, gassy noises, shrieks, and snorts of laughter. All pretense of Sunday morning decorum is lost, and something inside me, some furious, bossy desire to have my worship service go according to plan, finally slides free, and I can laugh with them. This will be the first of many times that I laugh at Sunday morning details gone awry. It is also the first of many times that I imagine that God is watching, looking up or down or over or out at us from wherever God sits on Sunday mornings, slightly amazed and maybe at a loss for words because we, God's people, are so funny and wonderful and odd all at the same time. In moments like these, I imagine God as a sturdy old woman with her hands on her hips, or perhaps a rabbi pulling on his long white beard. I imagine God shaking his or her or their head and saying, "What in the world are they doing over there?" But I also imagine a God who is touched and maybe a little honored by our efforts, however halting, to worship and give praise. I imagine a God who is moved by our attempts to care for one another and to name the things we know as holy. There is a warmth in this congregation that is new to me, a simple friendliness that shines through the fumblings and failures, a love that makes the ragged edges smooth. I have always wanted to believe, really believe, that our mistakes aren't the most important parts of us. I have always wanted to believe that kindness and compassion matter more than anything. I sense that I can learn that here. Those last words could have been my words. Each month, we have been exploring the proposed new values of the Unitarian Universalist Association bylaws that will be voted on this summer. This proposal reimagines how we articulate what is most important to Unitarian Universalism, 6 related values with love at the center of our faith. In the proposed bylaws revision, the value of transformation says this: transformation. We adapt to the changing world. We covenant to collectively transform and grow spiritually and ethically. Openness to change is fundamental to our Unitarian and Universalist heritages, never complete and never perfect. Openness to change is fundamental, never complete, and never perfect. At our best. This is the church where our mistakes aren't the most important parts of us, where kindness and compassion mean more than anything, where our odd humanness is met with joy. This is risky. This idea of bringing our full humanness to church, of choosing transformation over stagnation. I saw a bumper sticker last week that said, "It's weird how pretending everything is fine isn't working." Here, we don't have to pretend. Instead of singing our regular song for children to go down to their religious education classes, we are naturally going to have an all ages dance party to embody this expansive, freeing truth that we are bolder when we are in community, that here you don't have to be perfect to be loved. Will today's designated multi-generational dance crew now join me on the chancel and all rise in body or spirit for Try Everything by Shakira. And thank you to Will for pulling that through so we could get through that with whatever was going on in the church where sometimes things go wrong. Children can head down to religious education as we take a breath. Yes. Look how far you've come. You've filled your heart with love. You've done enough. Now take a deep breath. It is our practice in this community to pause every week to get in touch with the truths of our lives, our joys and sorrows, hopes and fears. What is true for you this week? What is lifting you up or weighing you down? What would you try if you were not afraid to fail? In the presence of a love that holds us all, we use our chalice flame to light our candles of community. We light our first candle as a blessing for the wider world, a candle for Gaza, that the ceasefire negotiations scheduled to happen this week may result in peace. May peace fill our hearts and our worlds, and may this flame inspire us to be peacemakers in our own lives. We know too that the details of our daily lives are sacred and important. We now light a candle for all of the simple joys that are sustaining us. And we light another candle in honor of the sorrows and hardships we may be carrying. One more candle in honor of the joys and sorrows we carry in our hearts, but that have not been spoken out loud. May the arms of this community hold all our joys and sorrows, those named and those that remain silent, close to our hearts. May we be transformed by the spirit of life and love, with warmth to celebrate our joys, and with gentleness to soothe our aching hearts. Listen to your own heart, the prayers it whispers, the truth it speaks in the silence we now share. Amen and blessed be. This is a sermon in two parts today. Part one, starting with an overview for newcomers and a reminder for all on what I'm about to talk about. I mentioned this a little bit previously. Here's more background. This summer, delegates to the Unitarian Universalist General Assembly will be voting on whether to update language in Article 2 of our denominational bylaws. Since 1985, Article 2 has contained the 7 principles found listed near the front of your gray hymnal, which are a primary way Unitarian Universalists have articulated our faith for decades. The proposed changes to Article 2 shift from these 7 principles to 7 values, with the core value of love at the center. More review. Without looking, does anyone here know how the 7 principles start?
We believe in the inherent worth and dignity of every person.
We believe in the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Yes, except that's not right. But I'm so glad you answered that, because that's what I was hoping for. Thank you for modeling how wonderful it is to not have the perfect answer. I heard a whole bunch of you saying it. I think the vast majority of Unitarian Universalists would answer that way. We start with the list of principles. We forget the action that goes with them. To covenant, Augie knows now. The 7 principles, as they currently read, start with this line. We, the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, covenant to affirm and promote. And then lists the 7 principles. We covenant to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person. We covenant to affirm and promote a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, and so on. What do we do as UUs? We covenant. But the way the 7 principles are currently written makes this idea of covenant almost invisible. It is preamble, not substance. The proposed Article 2 changes, however, include the idea within each of the values. Each of the proposed values has a specific covenant statement paired with it, a specific call to action that articulates how to be in right relationship with each other and with the wider world. Each month this church year, we have been reflecting on one of the values in the proposed Article 2 bylaws revisions, but we haven't talked much about what is perhaps the biggest change in this proposed Article 2 language, this focus on covenant. I know that the word covenant can be a loaded word, and we each bring in different ideas about what it might mean. And it's a word that can sometimes seem so abstract as to feel meaningless, so let's talk more about it today. Covenant is not only at the core of Unitarian Universalism, it is at the heart of transformation. In order to have somewhat of a shared understanding of what covenant is and what it is not, I want to share a short 2.5-minute video about covenant within Unitarian Universalism.
Humans have been asking questions about faith and commitment throughout history. In Jewish and Christian traditions, commitment was understood as covenant. God made promises to humankind, and humankind to God. In covenant, people promise to keep God's commandments, and God abides by the promises he makes. But covenant is very difficult to keep. Covenants were made, broken, and renewed. Our Puritan forebears in covenantal religion struggled in their time to understand how they might live a moral life and build a godly commonwealth. But they failed to ask, who is our neighbor? They failed to ask, do I love if I love only my own? Religious triumphalism in religion and their greed for land led to violence and the slaughter. It led to the enslavement of native peoples of this hemisphere and those of Africa. Their covenant was inadequate because without including love for God's creation and its peoples, it produced a covenanting community turned in on its own. Our covenanting must strive to be inclusive and transformative so that we might nurture a world of creativity and peace. What responsibilities do we have? To what? And to whom? UU James Luther Adams thought there was something greater to which we could commit our loyalty, to something he called an ultimate human concern. What is your ultimate concern? To what do you owe your loyalty and commitment? As we grow our personal understanding, strengthen, deepen our community, and practice spiritual justice making, we ask, what do we promise one another? How willing and capable are we of commitments that ask us to live our high aspirations? What promises do we make to our faith? What sacrifices are we willing to make? To create and sustain communities of welcome, hope, and service. What promises do we make to the world? How do we become the people who others can count on to stand on the side of love? What do we promise one another?
In other words, covenant in Unitarian Universalism is not just the promises we make to others who are like us in a closed circle. Covenant in Unitarian Universalism is far more expansive, inspiring, and challenging than that. Covenant allows us to welcome every individual without accepting all behaviors. It allows for repair when harm has been caused. It seeks to bring out the best in us individually and collectively. It guides how we can bring our funny and wonderful and odd humanity together imperfect, but always open to more love. Unitarian Universalist Association growth strategist, minister, and religious educator, Reverend Tandy Rogers says this, one of my favorite quotes ever about covenant. Unitarian Universalists are the people of covenant. We practice covenant. And I say practice because do we ever perfect it? No. Those mistakes, those steps away from right relationships are actually blessed opportunities for faith formation. I'm not interested in a pretty covenant with all the right words that sits dusty on a shelf. Give me a covenant with smudge marks and coffee stains and marked out words and added words and tear stains. Give me a covenant that makes us stretch for a lifetime and into the next generation. People, it is not our 7 principles that makes us Unitarian Universalist. It is our covenant among the people within our congregation, among the congregations in our area, and in our wider association, and with the wider world. Tandy concludes with this. Our covenant is with the ancestors who came before and the people yet to come. It is with the here and now and the transcendent. It is with our ultimate source, all of it. The biggest change of our bylaws with the proposed Article 2 revisions is not a rewording of our principles, for honestly, there aren't a lot of drastic changes between the current principles and the new values. Many of the new values echo the language in the principles. The biggest change is a renewed call to covenant. Imagine how this might transform us.
A covenant is not a definition of a relationship. It is the framework for our relating. A covenant leaves room for change and chance, and it is humble toward evolution. It claims it will abide with you in this common endeavor to be present as best as I can in our becoming. This calls for a level of trust, courage, and sacrifice that needs to be nurtured, renewed, and affirmed on a regular basis. A creed creates a static truth, something that does not incorporate new insights and realities. A covenant is a dance of co-creation, keeping in step with one another in the flow of our lives. A creed seeks uniformity and a unison voice. A covenant seeks harmony and a shared voice. Sometimes we may arrive at a unison, but it is not required. The creed gives authority to the statement. A covenant gives authority to shared intention. A creed creates us and them. A covenant invites relationship. A creed is a prescription that must be relied on. A covenant relies on the treasure of shared truths. We will now gratefully give and receive our share of the plate offering for Minnesota Honor Tax, which is a way to recognize support enduring sovereignty of the Lower Sioux Indian community. The honor tax is a voluntary payment made directly to the tribe, and it is one way that we can honor a wider covenant. Through our donations, we can, at least in some way, repair a relationship that has been broken. Will the ushers please come forward to receive our offering?
Sermon Part 2, Transformation. A covenant claims, I will abide with you in this common endeavor, be present as best I can in our becoming. Four years ago tomorrow, Governor Walz shut down all schools in Minnesota as a new deadly virus was spreading around the world. I remember the sense of dread in those early days of COVID-19. We wiped down our groceries and let our mail sit for days before it felt safe enough to touch. We stockpiled toilet paper and scrambled to make homemade masks as we watched the death toll rise, terrified by all we did not know. And then George Floyd was murdered by Minneapolis police, and our state and our nation erupted in long simmering rage and demanded peace, not the absence of conflict, but the presence of justice. It still makes me a little panicky and still brings tears to my eyes, remembering those early days of the COVID pandemic. The fear, the isolation, the staggering losses, the deadly injustice, the disorienting, desperate need for hope. Our bodies remember. Our world has changed. I didn't know you then. This job wasn't even on my radar as a possibility. Your minister at the time, Reverend Kristen, faithfully and lovingly guided UUFN through those first fearful days of the pandemic, and then the first weeks, and then those weeks became months. 3 years ago this spring, I was hired as your new minister. 2 years ago this spring, I finally preached for the first time in person here at this pulpit, April 3rd, 2022. Last year, UUFN had its first fully in-person church year since 2019. And last Sunday, you voted to launch a capital campaign to raise funds to expand the building and widen the circle. You are amazing. The community of UUFN has been through a lot in these past 4 years. Disagreements, disappointments, deaths of beloved members, and also dreaming of new possibilities, welcoming new members, laughing together, widening the circle, embodying hope. All of that is true. We covenant to collectively transform and grow spiritually and ethically. Openness to change is fundamental to our Unitarian and Universalist heritages, never complete and never perfect. I don't know how that idea of openness to change lands for you, but for me, it sounds both energizing and exhausting. Part of me thinks, I understand all life is change, but I have had enough transformation for a little bit. Thank you very much. Could we just pause and rest for a bit? And part of me thinks, all life is change. The future is full of possibilities ready to be made real. I am full of possibilities. We are full of possibilities ready to be made real. We covenant to transform and grow spiritually and ethically. To transform ethically. I think about my own journey as a white woman wanting to work towards racial justice, my journey learning about whiteness and white supremacy culture, and it has been a journey, a path often littered with defensiveness and shame, the remnants of how I have been socialized, and there is still so far to go for me. Transformation, I have learned, maybe the hard way. Transformation takes courage to recognize and change entrenched beliefs through deep listening, humility, and time. A specific example of one landmark on this journey of mine. I have always been a bit of a perfectionist. The idea of making mistakes, or rather people seeing me make mistakes, has held me back from taking risks and trying new things. I've long had a sense that if I am not instantly excellent at something, I shouldn't try it at all. I have always chalked that up to some combination of my personality and my upbringing, and that's true, but it goes so much deeper than that. A number of years ago, I first read Tima Okun's Characteristics of White Supremacy Culture. This is a list that isn't meant to cause shame, but rather to name more clearly how whiteness pervades our culture without us even realizing it. The first thing on that list of characteristics of white supremacy culture, perfectionism. According to that article, this is when making a mistake is confused with being a mistake, when doing wrong is confused with being wrong. This is often, quote, internally felt. In other words, the perfectionist fails to appreciate their own good work, more often pointing out their faults or failures, focusing on inadequacies and mistakes rather than learning from them. The person works with a harsh and constant inner critic. I know that harsh and constant inner critic. When I read this list of characteristics of white supremacy culture, I realized that silencing that inner critic voice is not only the work of therapy, though it is also the work of therapy. Silencing the voice of white supremacy culture that demands a veneer of perfection in order to feel worthy is also the work of liberation. This makes me feel bolder, less constrained by needing to be perfect before I begin. If I want to be anti-racist, I get to ignore my inner critic voice. It is a win-win situation. What if you were 10 times bolder? What if we were 10 times bolder? Also on the list of characteristics of white supremacy culture, a sense of urgency, defensiveness, fear of open conflict, individualism, and more. It is everywhere. To have these named so clearly has helped me and is helping me to grow both spiritually and ethically. With the proposed Article 2 language, I am being asked not to just affirm and promote spiritual growth, but to covenant to this kind of spiritual growth, to make a sacred promise about it, knowing it is never complete and never perfect. I love that balance of challenge and accountability with loving acceptance of my imperfection and my becoming. I'm thinking too about how the Land Acknowledgement and Beyond team here at UUFN has been living out this covenant this year. Today, after the service at its meeting, the board will vote on whether to endorse the Land Acknowledgement and Beyond statement that the team has created, and the congregation will vote to endorse it later this spring. The process the team has gone through crafting the land acknowledgement statement has been an exercise in spiritual and ethical transformation. It has been deeply relational, listening to the wisdom of Native peoples instead of immediately writing a shiny and simplistic statement that makes white people feel good. And thus it calls for a change of heart and a change of actions. The point is not just words on a page, but transformation. Theodore Parker, 19th century Unitarian theologian, preached often about what he called the transient and the permanent in religion. The transient and the permanent, the things that change and the things that stay the same. For Parker, who used the traditional religious language of his time, the only thing religion requires is, quote, the voice of God in your heart. That's it, the voice of God in your heart. This is the permanent, the divine who is with us, within us, around us, among us. For Parker, the rest is transient. Creeds, orthodoxies, belief, science, religion, culture, life changes, but love remains. The 7 principles, the new proposed values, these are important and give shape to our faith, but they are not our faith. They are transient. Relationship remains, covenant remains. James Luther Adams, 20th century Unitarian Universalist theologian, famously said, "Revelation is not sealed." In traditional conservative Christianity, a creed creates a static truth, something that does not incorporate new insights and realities. But in Unitarian Universalism, revelation is not sealed. There is always more to learn, more wonder and awe in the working of the cosmos, more to love in the widening of community, an ongoing dance of co-creation. Glenn Thomas Rideout, current UU theologian and director of worship arts ministries for First Universalist Church of Minneapolis, talks about church as both a conservatory and a laboratory. To paraphrase them, the church acts as both the conservatory, the home of what we are used to, what we find comforting, and the laboratory, where we try new risks and imagine what might be. Or, if you want a non-UU theologian, in the wise words of Leslie Higgins from the TV show Ted Lasso, human beings are never going to be perfect. The best we can do is to keep asking for help and accepting it when you can. And if you keep doing that, you'll always be moving towards better. Change plus relationship allows for transformation. Here, we'll meet you where you are, but we will not leave you there. Here, we are in the business of alchemy, turning loneliness into connection, individuals into community. The point of transformation is not perfection, it is connection. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. May it be so. Please rise in body or spirit for our closing hymn, number 1020 in the Teal hymnal, Wayaya, meaning we are going, 1020. You may be seated. I admit, I loved seeing you like kind of halfway wondering what you were going to say, but also just like going with it, all the swaying. It was beautiful. It was beautiful. Thank you for embodying exactly what we are talking about today. Our closing benediction is by UU Minister Reverend Joseph M. Cherry. This is prayer for living intention. If we have any hope of transforming the world and changing ourselves, we must be bold enough to step into our discomfort, brave enough to be clumsy there, loving enough to forgive ourselves and others. May we, as a people of faith, be granted the strength to be so bold, so brave, and so loving. May it be so, and may we make it so. We join together in the words for the extinguishing of the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Please rise, embody your spirit, and with your hands over your heart, holding a hand of those next to you, or whatever posture is most comfortable, we sing words of blessing one to another. Go in peace.
Do you see 1, 2? I don't think we need to break out into breakout rooms. I think we have enough people just to have us all here in one breakout room. So Jem, Brenda, Wendell, and others, Sabina.
Just leave everything on because we're going to need, well, for this.
How are you doing, Brenda?
Well, I've been better.
I'm sorry.
I'm not doing too well today. That's why I'm not in the building.
Okay. Well, you're dressed very nicely, so cheers to you then. And Wendell, I hope your surgery goes well.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, it's high-tech surgery these days. They are going to use a orthoscopic procedure and robotic arms.
Wow.
It's very futuristic.
Yeah. a very experienced surgeon has done about 2,000 of these, so I think he's okay.
Well, our thoughts are with you. So,
Yeah, thank you very much.
and Sabina, are you going to come
Yeah.
to the board?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, and I